Hi guys, welcome back to the show and this week's movie review.
You still have time.
Logan. Now, we all knew we were going to get a third in the Wolverine trilogy. We knew that was coming sooner or later. But thanks to Deadpool, we got the rated R version that we've always been wanting. Once again, thank you Deadpool for making so much money with a rated R film. So a rated R Wolverine kind of built everybody's anticipation like way up here. Because we know with the first two films, they were kind of like, Rated R Wolverine kind of just threw all that stuff to the side, brought us right back to the table, hungry to the theaters to come see another film. So now that it's out, let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's start with the cast. So the cast of this film, as always, is Wolverine as Hugh Jackman, because we couldn't get nobody else to play Hugh Jackman, and the fact that this is gonna be his last performance is still saddening. So much so that I'm hoping he changes his mind. But for his last performance, he is back playing Logan as normal. But we're also getting Professor Xavier in this film. He is kind of like old and disheveled and stuff like that, since this one's set in the future. Other characters that we have in this film, we have Daphne Keane, who's playing our Laura character. And if you're a big comic book fan like I am, we all know that her character is basically representing X-23, who is the new Wolverine in the comic books right now. Other people in this film is that we got to recast the Caliban, because I know he was in previous X-Men films, but this time he's being played by Stephen Merchant. And our villain is by Boyd Holbrook. I think I got his name right. He's playing the character Pierce, which you've seen in the trailer with the robotic arm. I think it was the right arm that was robotic. So that's pretty much going to take care of the main people in the cast of this film. So let's go ahead and talk about the plot. Now, the plot of this film is, like I said, it's set in the future. So we find Logan and Professor Xavier actually kind of hiding out near the Mexican border, near Juarez and El Paso. But they're hiding out because we're at a time and age where, there's barely any mutants left, if at all any, besides themselves. And I don't know if I do know, but it's one of those things where we don't know going into the film what they're hiding for. Is it because they're being hunted, or is it because that people don't accept them any further? But in either case, they're out. It's kind of post-apocalyptic what's going on, and as always in a Wolverine film, Logan tends to stumble on to something where he feels he needs to lend a hand or claws, I guess is what he does in his films. Alright, so that basically covers what this film is about. Let's kind of talk about what I did like and what I didn't like, and the goods and the bads. So the goods of this film is the action. I mean, action, brutal action. So much so that I kept calling this movie John Wick with knives. It's very, very brutal. Mainly because of that rated R, they use it to the full limit. We've always seen him in fight scenes, and we know when he cuts people, he's gashing and disemboweling people, especially in the comic books. In this movie, we definitely get to see it. We get to see it so much it makes you cringe. We get to see it from him, but we also get to see it from the little girl, Laura. And when I saw the trailer, I was like, I don't really believe some little 10-year-old girl is flipping and attacking and taking people down. Well, you believe her ferocity in this film. It's just amazing what they did, and whoever choreographed the fights in this, kudos to you. Kudos to you, because you did an excellent job. You gave me everything that I wanted in a Wolverine film, and gave me the Wolverine how I expect him to be, with his fury, his berserker rage, and his bloodlust, because he was, man, some people got hurt in this film. Other things that I liked about this film is the story. I mean, they really set us up in a sense to where we get to find out a lot about the characters, because this movie is long. It's about 2.5 hours. You really get to find out about the characters. It makes you care for them and where they're at in this particular world. Like I said, it's set in the future, so you don't really know what's happened since the last time we saw them in the X-Men Apocalypse, or I guess it would be X-Men The Last Stand, because based on their wacky timeline. We don't really know what happened from there to there, so you kind of got to get involved in where we're at in this particular world in this time frame. So they do a really good job with that. They do a really good job with the villain. They do a really good job with the new young girl character X-23, which brings me to my next point. The characters were awesome in this film. With comic book movies, people have been complaining a lot about, the villains are being underdeveloped. I can't say that they explained a lot about this particular villain, but based on what they gave you on screen, you were invested in what he was as a villain, and you kind of just went with it and you understood. There are some other things that kind of unfurl in the movie and kind of go down a path, but this is a non-spoiler review, so I'm not going to really get into all that stuff. But the characters, I enjoyed them themselves. I enjoyed the old, grizzled, old man Logan, because it's not really an old man Logan story. It's a story about an old man who is Logan, but it's not the old man Logan story. And I love what they did with Professor X in this movie. Patrick Stewart, good job once again, because he gave you the kind of prim and proper Professor Xavier for so long. To see the old, senile, Professor X is hilarious on screen. So, and I did like what they did with the little girl, Daphne Keene, because the majority of her role was to be have a persona without saying any words. I mean, her character is basically dialogueless throughout this movie, and she still has to come across on screen with just looks and glances, and she gives some mean ones. Alright, so that's where I'm going to stop with the goods so I don't go into any spoiler stuff. Let's talk about what I didn't like in the bads, which is really kind of hard for a movie that I really, really enjoyed. But there were a couple of things that I thought were bad about this film, and they're minor nitpicks. One of the things that I thought was bad with this film is that it peaks and valleys. Not in a bad way though. It's just the way that they decide to pace it. It picks up really, really fast in certain areas, especially when we get to these really tense and then action scenes. But then after they are over, it drops back down. And most of that's is based on kind of setting the story and where they're going in the rest of the movie. So they have to slow down to kind of get that dialogue out and kind of let you know what they're trying to set up. And then we pick right back up. But then once we get past that, we drop back down. And then we pick back up, and then we drop back down. So it was a lot of that throughout the movie. So it almost kind of felt, if you were on the high from the action and everything that they were giving you, that it just kind of like, when are we going to get back to that? So that's the only thing, but I enjoyed the story so much, I was okay with that happening. And also too, you can't have it, full out all the way through, a la John Wick. I think that's the only movie that could do that, because it'll burn you out a little bit. So this one dropped down, picked back up, and you felt the emotion levels in it. So there is another bad that I have, but I'm not gonna say it because it is a major spoiler. But I really was bothered by it, so much so I'm not even gonna say it. I'll just, when I do the spoiler review with Manny on the Goods podcast, we'll talk about it then. So overall, how did I feel about this movie? I love this movie. This was the great way to send Hugh Jackman off as Wolverine / Logan, and I hope that he changes his mind after doing this film and decides to come back and give us Wolverine at least one more time. There is not a post-credit thing, so don't stick around. The audience that was with, they actually booed the screen because there wasn't anything post-credit, but how can you do post-credit for something when it's supposed to be the last movie in his final performance? There is something pre, though, if you've been on the internet, so you know what that pre thing is. That's enjoyable. Make sure you get there early enough to watch it. Alright, so you go see it. If you've invested your time in 3 movies, yes, go ahead and see it. If you're a comic book fan, this is the comic book movie that you want, because it's a movie that features comic book characters, but is not really a comic book film. It's more of a gritty, post-apocalyptic, I would almost say kind of Mad Max's, I mean, not to that extent, but in that setting, in a Mad Max type of setting. And if you have kids, take them with caution. I mean, it is a hard R. Not as a Deadpool hard R, but it is it's close. It's close. I'll give you that. That's all I got for this movie review this week. Take care, guys.